Welcome everyone, my name is Feren Szalai and we are here in the ICQ office in Budapest and we are talking in TechTalks with Ulrich Weinberg. Please introduce yourself. What are you doing here?
I'm actually trying to. I'm a little bit on not on a sightseeing tour, but actually on a fact-finding tour, together with some people who invited me from the creative industries, actually music industry, creative industries, to find out what kind of potential design thinking could have here in certain areas in the industry, in the startup scene, in activities also from the government, and that's what I'm trying to find out.
Because your expertise is design thinking, if I understand correctly. How do you see what is happening in the design in related to design thinking nowadays? How big corporation or small corporation using this new approach to solve problems?
Yeah, I'm actually dealing with design thinking since quite a long time. I'm since 12 years. I'm running the School of Design Thinking in Potsdam, close to Berlin, and at the Plattner Institute. That was actually Plattner was the person who financed design thinking at Stanford about 15 years ago, who found it out. And Plattner is the co-founder of SAP, so he's an entrepreneur. He's still very actively promoting not only IT, but also, in the meantime, also design thinking as an approach to change the mindset of the people. So, and in 2007, he got the idea of looking at what was happening at Stanford and how impactful design thinking was. He was saying we need the same thing also in Europe, in Germany. And then I got involved. And since this time, I'm first of all, we were focusing on students. And we found out pretty soon that design thinking is something, is an approach which is helping not only individuals, but especially groups, teams, organizations, companies to reinvent themselves in a very, very good way. And this is what I'm following through the last years. And it's really interesting to see the impact growing.
Yeah, and I think even though design thinking recently became a more and more known phenomena around industries, especially in the tech industries, would you mind if you ask you to summarize what do you think is design thinking and what typically considered design thinking while it is not?
Yeah, we see. So when we started 12 years ago in Potsdam, there was no book about design thinking. There was nearly nothing, no information.
But the IDEO guy, Tom Brown, wrote this very famous book.
Yes, innovation books. There was no book with design thinking in the title. Right? But the people were thinking at the beginning, and I still see a lot of agencies dealing with design thinking as user-centered design, and it's just a method. Mm-hmm. While when we started, I was looking at, yes, there is a method, but there are two other highly important components which are defining design thinking from our point of view. So in our framing is, yes, there is a method, and the method is the method of fluidity. So we have to get out of that kind of linear, rigid process models.
A lot of iterations.
Like the waterfall models will be replaced by iterations, by nonlinear interactivities. By because look at those machines. I don't know of any software piece or no app which is finished.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we always get updates.
We always get updates. As soon as we have a piece of software which is finished, which is not updated, it's kind of dead. So, and it's a completely different approach than looking at a piece of hardware we are used to. So, and yes, the method is one thing to kind of get into this kind of fluid mode, but there are two other important things, and one is that we rather should join forces for solving complex problems or getting into this mode with others from different disciplines. So the whole approach is still how to solve complex problems better, and how to come up with new ideas in a better way. And from my perspective, our perspective, the best approach is really to set up a complex setting, which means a little team from different disciplines, different cultural backgrounds, different personalities, and then have them collaboratively solve that problem, not competitively, but collaboratively. And I use the term team of teams. I started using that because it's not only one team, it's actually a group of people with, not swarm. I think swarm is very good. It's very good for animals, not for humans, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, tend to not follow each other very much.
Every human swarm ends up in some kind of military configuration. But if you look at the industry, I think the team of teams mode is much more efficient. The only problem is we don't learn this in school. In school, you get trained to be an individual competitor, and still that's the case. So the third component is the space. The physical space,
where the actual magic happens.
Yeah. And we found out 12 years ago we had to use a normal office space, hack it a little bit, get rid of some walls and change the floor and build in some new things. But we were looking for furniture for working together in a team of 5-6 people,
like round tables and
we wanted to have a stand-up table because there was a finding at Stanford at that time that they tried with sitting position, standing position. They found outstanding, gets the people much more agile, so keeps them awake, energized. And so I was asking the industry, can you give us a stand-up table for 5-6 people? We wanted to have them movable, rolls underneath, 2 floors, and so on. It was not available. So we had to design our own furniture at that time.
Did you use design thinking to design the furniture?
Of course. We used design, especially. But actually, it was a teamwork. It was really building. We did some prototypes, and we did it with a little company in Berlin. And we probably built some of the first collaboration furniture on the planet. Because now later we got approached by big furniture manufacturers. They were asking us, can you help us to develop our furniture in a better way, more collaboratively? Because there were conference tables, there were coffee tables, all kinds of things, but there was no furniture available. So that is the third thing, the space. And I would even go a little step further. I think we also need to rethink the architecture, not only the furniture, the interior, but the whole architecture we're learning now and we're working now is all constructed in times, most of the whole thing.
After the revolution and the
industrial revolution. And it fits to that kind of analog age, but it doesn't really fit to nowadays, to the fluidity. And I think that's a huge challenge for the architects. And there was something coming up through the last years when we were visiting different places and actually witnessing. We helped a lot of design thinking schools all over the planet now to develop, to grow. We also started the Global Design Thinking Alliance, having now 17 members in 5 continents all over. And we figured out all of those are using traditional places and hacked spaces, hacked architecture. So
removed walls, special arrangement, and so on.
Yeah, even ourselves, we are using former office spaces, and rearranged it a little bit. But if you look closely, you see this is just a hacked space. This is not architecture built for the work of today. And I have seen very, very few examples, really very few examples, where I moved in and I had the feeling, wow, this is architecture made for now.
I have to ask, what do you think about the open office discuss currently running around? Half of the people think that open space office is good for collaboration and things. And other one says that, oh well, that's too loud, too distracting, and so on. What do you think? What is your experience in that regard? So which kind of office space actually cultivate innovation, if you like? That's kind of more broad questions.
A lot of companies are asking those questions now, and not only companies who are building new, actually also companies who are restructuring their office space and so on. And what we did on purpose in Potsdam. And we were saying we want to focus fully on the we experience, the collaboration experience. So we put everything out, which is the I, which is representing the I experience, the separation, the isolation, the IQ thing. So we are focusing fully on what we call the we Q, the we qualities, and that was on purpose because all our participants, the students, they are coming out of a learning experience which is fully I-focused, which is you sit in a lecture hall, run
maybe in a cubicles or something like that.
Then the workers, they sit in cubicles and they sit in isolated individual offices. So, which means we're throwing out, let's say, a flip chart is an I tool. A single person can do something with that, but not too many. Yeah, not too many. And but we, of course, the working world is not only a we world. So I'm promoting flexibility. So there should be a very large we component, and we components from our perspective is four different areas. One is the work space where the teams are collaborating. So you have the work spaces, the team tables, surrounded by whiteboards and with all kinds of visualization capabilities. Then you have the share space. That's the area where teams are sharing with the other teams for a short moment, 3 minutes or so. What are their obstacles right now? What are their new findings? So then you have the make space. You need the kind of laboratory. You need the place where you have the 3D printer, you have the saw, the hammer, and all kinds of material stuff. And you need a space for relaxing, the lounge, or how you call that. So those 4 areas you definitely need for the we components. But of course, you need also a little area where you can have a nice phone call on your own. You need an area where you can sit together with one by one. Yeah. And so this kind of flexibility should be offered in an office environment. But actually, I would really state focus should be on the we issues, and flexibility should be key. So that's why we put everything on wheels. Everything, every couch is on a wheel.
Which is actually
so you can move it around.
If I understand, which was actually the original open office concept, that movable walls and rearrangeable spaces. So not just like free office space, but actually rearrangeable spaces.
But you also need to experiment with material which is noise cancelling. And I'm not a big fan of a full large office where everyone sees everybody all the time. I think people don't like that. And
collaboration usually need networks, and you have this book, Network Thinking, which is interestingly start to connect two big new concepts like networks and design thinking. Can you elaborate a little bit how these two things connected?
No, it actually doesn't. I wrote the book because I was trying to find a pattern to describe the severeness of the paradigm shift we are in right now, from analog ways of thinking and doing to digital connected world. And I'm using, actually in this book, I'm using 2 patterns. This is the pattern of the 21st century, but the pattern of the past century is, I call that the Brockhaus. Let's try to find it here. It is the silo structure.
Yeah.
Here. Look at that.
Yeah.
So I was trying to find a very easy to understand pattern, and I think if you look at the traditional encyclopedia and the structure in the shelf, in the bookshelf, it is a very good representation for things which are disappearing right now. And I was so I'm using the German Brockhaus, which is the most famous encyclopedia, 200 years of history, up and running, but discontinued 2014 forever. Very interesting. The publisher decided we stopped the printing of the book because we found out that way of knowledge aggregation is over. It's replaced by a network version of knowledge aggregation, which is Wikipedia, Google, whatever, the network version. And so I started using that pattern because that is actually the pattern which people draw on the whiteboard when we start a project. And I ask them, please draw me your company.
And not the hierarchical structure anymore. Yeah.
It's not if a startup, if I'm dealing with a startup, they draw me that kind of picture.
Yeah, sure.
But if I'm talking to representatives of large organizations, and we are dealing with companies like Bosch or Siemens or Volkswagen, they draw that rigid encyclopedic structure. And so I started using that, and I'm pointing on this structure which they offered to me, and I'm saying this is the fading out model. This is a pattern which used to be useful in times of analog activities, and where no digital network was there, no internet was there. So we had to do things like sorting from A to Z, separating, thinking in hierarchies. We had to do that. There was no other way. But now we are living in times where technology is allowing us to do this kind of things way easier. And this is where we have to move. And then an interesting discussion starts with those people. And because they're usually a CEO of a large organization, he would fully agree. He would say, yeah, we are moving from the old pattern to the new one. But the next question is, what shall we do? How can we maneuver with 200,000 people? How can we do this?
And what do you think? What is the most...
My answer is design thinking.
Yeah.
My answer is, then I'm saying probably there are lots of agile frameworks, and there's a number of methods, but probably the most holistic way to approach that and to move from the old pattern to the new one is design thinking. In a way, we are framing that with the three core things. Because we have to ask those questions today. And a company they have to ask the question, do we still want to have our people work competitively in our corporation with individual incentives? And the answer is no.
But the answer no, but still my experience says that they move very slowly, if at all, into this direction. And what do you think, why it is so hard to change? Even small, I mean, few tens or 100 people size organization can change very, very slowly and apply these new methodologies.
Yeah.
And why do you think it is?
Why?
Why?
I think that is because we are trained that way. We are completely not trained to think this way. We are trained to think in a very linear way in schools, university. The whole education system is not preparing ourselves, not our kids, not even our kids, to a world of the 21st century. The education system is still making people believe that separating things is better than connecting. Separating different disciplines is better than connecting.
Solving everything by self.
Individual grading is better than teamwork. And if you look at the overall pattern, after 10 years of learning this kind of habits, you have no chance to intuitively act like this. Just no chance. And this is why I started using that pattern to make very clear that the conditioning process of our education system is so intense that most of the people have very hard time to really adapt to the new things, even if they are using all these machines, they are playing with technology, they are using technology, their mind is still in a very rigid, structured mode. And this is a problem we are facing in the society globally. That's not just in Europe.
Not just even tech.
No, that is everywhere, And that is something in my book. There are two big portions. One is focusing on the problems of the industry. So how can they move forward and what should they do? And the other portion of the book, the other half, is dealing with education. So it's looking at the education systems and giving ideas to teachers, but especially decision makers in the political area, because we have to change fundamentally the approach.
Probably that will be the hardest.
And to make them aware, so to actually activate them to think about redesigning the incentive models, for example.
What do you think? What these organizations, even small ones, because you mentioned before that startups naturally incline to this mode of thinking because when small organizations try to solve a lot of things, that there is basically naturally solves kind of in an iterative, more agile way. But when we become larger companies, then all the structures, all the rules somehow solidify more rigid structures. What do you think, even those small and big companies, what is the thing what they usually miss, what they do, what they don't get about design thinking and applying this network thinking method?
You mean the larger companies?
Oh, no, larger or smaller, but if you want, you can focus on the larger ones, because that's probably the more visual ones. But what they typically miss, what they typically misunderstand, even though they really want to apply these things, but somehow they just that's the point what they typically miss.
I think they underestimate the learning curve which is involved.
How long? What does it take?
Yeah, that it's not just a thing you introduce like. Equipping all the people with tablets. That's easy. That's an easy task. You just have to spend several thousand euros, and then you give every person a machine. But changing the mindset, which is established over a period of maybe 15 years, that takes a while. And that actually takes a training process. This is why we are training with Bosch, for example, hundreds of people for a longer period to make them enablers in their own organization to train others, to set up a snowball system, and there's no way around it. We have to, and the larger corporations, they have to establish this kind of internal kind of de-learning processes to give people the chance really to adapt to the new age. Even the young people coming out of the schools, they need a kind of de-learning because they are still prepared for the old way of thinking. If you look at Bosch, they looking at that pattern and the wish of establishing a collaboration culture in the organization. They decided from one day to the other. Actually, it was a longer process before, but they were saying we need to stop individual incentives. And they got rid of it. For 400,000 people globally, January 1st, 2016, they stopped individual incentives. Because the 10 board members were agreeing, they were saying we need to have a cultural shift. And that didn't cost any money. They was not investing in a piece of hardware for every person. But it was actually much harder because it was a switch in your head.
Culture.
But it was very important. From my perspective, way more important than to equip any
Did it work?
Of course, they're still doing that. They didn't draw it back. Actually,
there was no revolution about
they were expecting
rebellion.
a little bit a rebellion, but it was not happening. It was actually asked. I asked the CEO, Volk Madena, a year later, how he would look at that and if he would draw that back, and he was saying, no, it was a very important step for changing the culture towards more openness because now leaders in the organization, they allow to talk about mistakes. They allow themselves to admit there was things not going well. And they didn't do that before because they were fearing, I feel that in my pocket.
Yeah, my experience says that these methods like design thinking and any agile techniques, where one of the core observation is that repetition, failure is a natural part of the learning curve you have to go through in order to do any kind of new and innovative things in an organization. Especially emphasized when we are talking about machine learning, AI techniques, where there is basically no way to move forward or even apply these techniques technically and in an organizational level. What do you think? How organizations and can apply design thinking the most effective way in these new areas like machine learning, AI, and data-driven decision making?
And we didn't tackle one important part, which is the human-centeredness of design thinking, of the whole approach. And I think that plays an important role here in this regard, because we are now moving into an era where we're confronted with pieces of technology which are affecting our lives, but it's not like this kind of piece of hardware which we feel in our pocket. No, it is a tracking of our behaviors, where it's kind of invisible, and I think we should. Design thinking can help very much to really figure out what kind of product, services, systems we actually want to have as humans. Right now, I see the whole tech industry way too much driven by let's just do everything what we are able to do. We are able to do.
Not everything has to be done which can be done.
I don't think on a long run that we need everything which we are capable to do. I think we have to intensively control our capacities in a way that it really makes sense for us as humans. Yes, of course, we could build incredible weapons which would kill all people at the same time, immediately with no big effort. But should we do that? No, probably not.
Yeah, but if you are not even going that further, I think a lot of currently existing technology is not necessarily what people imagine they really need that one.
Yeah.
And
I'm not a believer in that tech can solve all our problems. Absolutely not. Tech can help if you're using it right, but tech is actually causing right now a little bit more problems
than always solves, it seems like, or at least we realize that they're causing problems, of course, because for a long time everybody was kind of believe that, okay, we have this new bird and everything will be just fine if we just apply enough technology. But now they realize that, okay, too much technology may be a little bit of a bad thing.
You know why that happens? I think a big part of the reason for what we are seeing right now is still the disconnected way of thinking. I would call that the Brockhaus thinking. That is because there are specialists in a certain field in a certain column, they are competing with the other specialists in that certain column to be the better specialist in that certain column. And they are not
really speaking with the other
with
ones.
others. They are not looking at the holistic impact of things which they are actually doing, because they are not trained. They are not trained in it. They are trained to be better in their competitive field. So we are way too much looking in, still thinking in this kind of little silos, instead of saying this, the just silo view is, on the long run, is not a healthy mode. And especially if you are developing high-end technology, which is more and more capable, exponential capable. So we have to be more aware. So we have to, as soon as you start thinking in a more connected mode, interconnected mode, things like sustainability get automatically integrated, which you usually keep outside. You're saying, we think about that later, but that is a part of the normal thinking.
Yeah, a lot of people says that the global economy is slowing down, and it seems to be from one perspective that after a big spike in around 2000, tech did not really contribute to high productivity gain. Do you think that the missing link could be that tech in itself not enough, this kind of new way of thinking and solving problems, could be the source of the productivity increase we are really missing, especially in Europe, but other parts of the world as well?
I think that is a global problem. I think that is not just a European or American problem or an Asian. That is a fundamental problem, and I frame it in a way that I would say we are focusing too much. And the whole discussion in Germany, for example, Industry 4.0, the whole discussion is very much tech-driven. But what we try with design thinking, what we try to add is kind of the cultural dimension of the digital transformation. So it's not just a tech dimension. And it's treated like this right now. But the even more interesting and much more deep dimension is the cultural dimension we have to address. And with the little 3 questions we are asking ourselves, you are moving into this direction, and you make people aware, that's more than just a new piece of glass and new app and a new piece of hardware. It's way deeper, and we have to start actually from there. We have to start from the cultural questions and then ask, what kind of technology do we really need?
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And be your best. Thank you.